Good day everyone, and welcome to another vlog for the Exodus 7 to 12K JV project. In this week's video, I don't have as much as I would have liked to have. I've gotten to a lot of other little projects in between this week specifically, but I do have a few things I would like to show you guys. The first of which is smoke. Now remember last time we talked about the field and, fire and all that kind of stuff. Now, yesterday, I think it was like last night even, I started working on smoke and I found two very interesting things. So I want to start by showing you the first one. And that is when you have smoke, but the smoke cuts off at the top of the screen. It doesn't fade out on screen, which is a very common thing for anime style stuff. It's actually quite rare for you to see where smoke ends. You really only see it on factories, ships, that sort of thing. So I'm going to be showing you how to do that. The example I have here is not for a field, but you can apply it to one. So let me show you what it looks like. So that is fire and smoke. In this case, I did not edit the fire like I did for the previous example. Personally, I prefer the previous example with the video screen tone. But this is definitely not bad. I really do like this as well. The only problem is the bright areas are not bright because they're giving off light. They're bright because of the sun lamp specularity. You can see the sun is coming from this side. So if you were to add this in the shade, you would just get a red shape, unfortunately. So let me quickly show you the setup for the smoke, and then we can move on to the next thing. So the setup for the smoke is quite simple. Let me just turn on screencast keys. Oh goodness. Wrong key. Now, as you can see, this is just a bunch of little rocks that are floating upward, and they're just made from a single particle. If you want to add more variation, you can make more. All I did was add a round cube and added some displacement to it, a cloud texture, whose size I did increase to 1.05, just so we can get a little bit of variation, but not too much, because this is what it looked like initially. 0.025. No, it's 0.25. This is what it looked like initially. It's too sharp, it's too pointy, I don't like it. We get plenty of detail by adding children particles, so if you want to do that, do that. Okay, so the setup itself is very similar to the fire setup. So I only used about 1,000 particles for 300 frames, which is more than enough because of the amount of children particles we use. I did give it a long lifetime, but not too long so that we can fade it out quite quickly. I also added a little bit of randomness so that some die off a little bit sooner. It just gives you a cloudy feel. I don't know how else to put it. It really is just a cloudy feel. Of course, normal geometry is the same. Emitter geometry, is the same thing as with the fire. You have to make it go to a direction, turn off gravity, add a little bit of rotation to the object itself, make it a little bit random, as you can see over here. Make it dynamic as well, add a little bit of velocity to that rotation so that it's consistently moving. As you can see, I did add some randomness to the particle size, which helps a lot. And now for the most important part, children particles. In the viewport, you can only see a fraction of the amount that will actually be rendered, but these are still adjustable for just seeing those. I mean, look at what happens if I turn it off. Quite a difference. So the actual number would look like this. I hope it doesn't freeze. Yeah. That's the actual number. So as you can see, it's quite thick. It really is. Just going to set it back to 10. What I did here was purely give it some rough detail, so that the smoke particles kind of come out of the smoke and go back into the smoke, and out of the smoke and go back into the smoke, giving you almost like a wavy type feel to it. If you go and look at real smoke, you see that. And if you look at anime smoke, it's like they run in a pointy water kind of cycle, where it's going in steps up the cloud. Sometimes they fade away, sometimes they don't. It just depends on the amount of effort that they would put into it. So that is good. Just some randomness over there. And of course, like I said, you turn off gravity and stuff because smoke tends to rise. And that's already applied in here. But what you can do though is if you wanted to add some sort of vortex and stuff like that, keep gravity off, but leave all turned on so that you can add force fields to it. Just a quick tip there. Okay, that's fine. And vertex groups I didn't use at all. Another tip I would like to give you for getting that wavy kind of feel. Another tip for that wavy kind of feel, you can see here that we have these waves going up the smoke. Hold on. You can see that there's a bump, another bump, another bump. The way I did this, God's absolutely brilliant, showed me this, is you move your emitter backwards and forwards in a very smooth fashion, and that allows you to get a much more wavy kind of feel to it. So I'm just going to show you here below the plane, like that. It helps with a fire as well. Now if you wanted to, you can also make it go in a circle. But the best part about this is the fact that you hide the emission point. So it looks like the smoke is coming off the ground and off the fire versus off a plane. I mean, look at that. That looks much better than this. Nice. Okay, so that's pretty much smoke. Very, very cool. I hope it works for you guys as well. The second part about the smoke that I want to show you guys is what to do when you want to show that it stops. Now you have two options. The one works with pretty much any situation, and the other one only works if you're on the ground level looking up and there's nothing behind the smoke. Heads up on that. So what you would do for that is you would turn on transparency. Oh, let me just show you the material quickly before you get to the transparency. It's part of it. All I do is I add a normal ramp to it just to get a little bit of a definition line around here. If I don't add it, the smoke looks very, very flat. Then you only have the light coming from your light source, whether it be sun lamp or a point lamp or the fire or whatever. And it doesn't give you the right kind of look. Let me show you what it looks like without compositing so you guys can see the difference between the two. Okay, now you can see it. See over here? That's what's caused by the normal lines. By the normal ramp I added to it. You can see it adds a lot more character to it. Now let's say I turn it off. Not very interesting, is it? Visually, it's just going to be this gray block on the scene. So definitely add that little normal ramp. So just so you can see the settings, pause the video, you can copy this, play with it, have fun. Okay, now I want to show you the transparency. What you would use is mask. If you turn mask on, it's a much faster transparency than Z transparency. Trust me on this one. I tried it. Z transparency for this amount of articles, you have to have one beast of a system. It's not practical for this kind of setup. So I turn it on and I turn the alpha texture on again. So now I'm going to be showing you how it looks on here. What I want to do is I want to apply it to an empty because I want it to go along the smoke. So I'm making a quick change here. I just want to get my smoke particle. There it is. So I want to set it to a different object, meaning the empty. And I want to rotate it to fit the smoke. In other words, on the x-axis, just like that. Because smoke fades out evenly as it goes. Well, unevenly, but you get the point. But it will gradient along the line of the smoke. It won't gradient 100% vertical. Okay, let's get a render frame over that. And let's hit render. Yeah, see? Made funny look. So I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees so that we can see. There we go. There it fades. That is wonderful. The only catch is that it's a little bit too short. You can see that it ends kind of quickly. So what you can do is you can just take it on the y-axis and just expand it a little bit. No, it's way too much expanded. You can go for a short stop. It's not the end of the world, honestly. So now if you have your whole fire, then you can see something like this. And there you have it. See, the smoke fades out quite smoothly because of the compositing setup. Just a note though, as far as the transparency isn't 100% clear, you will get a blur if you blur the smoke, like I do. So that's the one tip that you can do if you have smoke running with particles and you want it to fade out. The reason this does not work is because mask uses the sky. So if you had an object behind it, let's make a cube be our example. Doesn't work at all. This is why Z transparency would be ideal, but because of the amount of particles, it's not practical. It's really not. Blender struggles a lot to process Z transparency for something like this. And again, like I said, wherever it's not 100% gone, the particle, you will get this if you use the kind of compositing I do, which I'm also going to be showing you. I just want to get to the transparency. I'm not going to be using that. Just want to turn off the texture too. Okay. So the compositing for this is quite simple. All I do is I separate out the smoke by using an ID mask. Let's just see which one is the smoke. I think it's 2. It's 2 or 3. It's 2. Of course, anti-aliasing doesn't help with tint as your pixel filter under your anti-aliasing settings. It's a very simple, very quick form of anti-aliasing. And now I blur this. I think you can go for 2. And you add it over itself, just to give you a little bit extra strength. And then that becomes your mask. And you add your original, make sure that it goes into the right slot. That is good. Make the other one the original image after you have blurred this one, because it does need to be blurred and it needs to be mixed as well. So you can take your original image, blur it only once, twice is a bit much, depends on the distance your smoke is from the screen. From the camera, from the screen. Anyway, okay, so then you can just stick that in there. Now you can see it's already blurred, but it's way too much, so you just need to reduce it a little bit. It's not supposed to be unrecognizable, it's just supposed to be smooth and soft and fuzzy. You can clamp that, and then of course add your sharper image in there and soft smoke. The fire follows a very similar pattern, except that you add it over itself instead of just blurring it. Let's say you have a ship. Now, you guys have seen this in a video before. So what I want to do is I just want to show you guys how I did that. So you just unwrap this. Unwrap from view bounds. And now you need to take this object and evenly pull it out to the size that you want the smoke to be. So let's say we're going to mimic our fire that we did for the field just now. So that is our origin point, and this is going to be our end point. So let's say the fire is going to be going along the field almost like a huge field fire would. Something like that. And let's make it pull slightly to the side. Let's pull this in slightly. Out. And in. And out. Yeah, something like that. Just a good funnel, you know. What I would suggest is deleting this face. Yeah. That should do it. Also stretch this one out. And add one more loop cut. Stretching it out. Okay, that is going to be our smoke. Hit smooth. And you are going to be using subdivision for this, by the way. Now, because it's pointing in this direction, you can choose to go with an empty moving along this axis, or you can choose to go the route of the wave modifier, that sort of thing. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to, in this case, be using an empty, because it's all going in one direction. We don't need to make it exactly follow the geometry. That's what the unwrapping was for, by the way. Just give it a displacement. Let's call this one smoke small. Object, set it to the empty. And let's make the empty move. Setting it to 30 frames per second, and the sync is on. There. Let's quickly smooth this animation out. That is good. Now, if you were to set this displacement to the empty, you will see that when it moves, nothing happens because we don't have a cloud texture. So let's add that cloud texture. At the moment, we're not going to be able to judge the size. We need to add subdivision first. So let's give it a... Ooh, goodness. See, this is the problem with the texture sizes. So you can either scale this thing up or you can scale the texture up. Since this is a small movement, and just double check it, it is a small movement. Yeah. We don't need to overscale this thing. So let's just give it a good increase in size. Yeah, something like that. Let's play it. Let's have the empty go slightly up too, because it's like the smoke just kind of levels out before it's supposed to even go up. So I'm just going to pull it slightly up too, and just replace that keyframe so that it goes along the smoke. Now let's check that out. That's much better. And if you want to, you can actually just leave it at this too. This will also work. So let's add our texture to this, which will be, we'll call this just smoke material. And it will need to be a toon material. with that normal applied. Now 1.28 as per usual. This has to be black. Just going to reduce it. Has to be on add. And this has to be way darker. Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah. And of course, full oversampling. Pass index of 2. Doesn't have to be 2, I'm just using 2. And of course, no specularity, because it's too soft. You can add specularity. I'm not going to say don't. I'm just saying I don't. Let's just apply on this. Yeah, that's very cool. I do want to add a slightly bigger displacement as well. Let's call this one smoke large. Also apply it there. And make this one much bigger. I think you can make it even bigger. No, it's too big. Also need to give it some more strength. There we go, that way. And there you've got some serious smoke. And as you can see, you can weight paint it down here. For the bigger displacement, I would actually recommend weight painting it here at the bottom so that the bigger weight movement happens here at the top where it dissipates. But for the example, we're not going to focus on doing that sort of thing. It's just about the material, showing you how to get it to fade off. Just want to get this normal thing down because it's just way too strong. Okay, now transparency. In this case, the transparency is absolutely appropriate. Get a texture in here and call this alpha smoke. Move it one down and call this one alpha warp. This one will be a cloud texture, mute it for the moment. And this one will be just a blend texture set to your vertical coordinates on UV unwrapping, no color, only alpha. And now if you view this, you should see this happen, which is just the wrong way around. Just flip that and make it nice and strong. And that's what it looks like. Just be wary of going too close to the edge because we are going to warp this texture. And make sure you save off it. Okay, that is good. Now let's warp it. That's what this alpha warp texture is for. And we do want it to be fairly small, not too small. First need to check what the material will look like with the texture only. I think we can make it smaller. Let's go for like 0.1. Yeah, 0.1. And then warp it. So you can make it fairly strong, not too strong. It's just about breaking up the texture. As you can see, it creates these little flame-like shapes. So we need to either move the texture up, which we can do, but we also need to fix the texture. This is way too scrunched up. So let's go for 2. Actually, let's keep it on 1 and reduce the warp to 0.1 and increase our alpha reach. Yeah, something like that will do. I'll pull it back a little bit because it needs to fade more. Yeah. Okay. And there you have some serious smoke with, of course, the other particles in here. I don't know why it makes this weird glow, but let's not get into it right now. So that's how you can make a little bit more solid smoke that does fade out. You can use this for ships' chimneys and all that kind of stuff. If you just narrow it a little bit, this is way big. Yeah, it's a bit more realistic. So you can apply this to, like I said, pretty much any situation that needs a good fire, good smoke. That's wonderful. And now for another cool trick. Now, some of you would have seen this already. Boom. Now, as you can see, I did a tutorial for this week. I hope you guys have seen it. It's basically the same principles applied in the tutorial, except that I noticed that my lightning moves faster in this case. And one thing I didn't do in the tutorial was weight paint the bottom of the plane that hits the head over here, so that the bottom part of the lightning strike is stable. So it doesn't move around. As you can see, it stays fairly on point here. The other thing that's also different is the texture I applied to the shocking experience over here. I used that caustic type texture. I showed you guys in the previous video as well. But everything else is pretty much exactly the same. Same technique. It's the exact same technique. I also changed the particle shape to be more of a half moon or a crescent moon. Not half moon, it's crescent moon. In this one, I had crescent moons too, but they were displaced and yeah. I prefer the combination of both. That would be really cool. So if you guys haven't checked out this tutorial yet, you can check it out in the description. I will also add a card to the video that you guys can get quick access to it. Now, this applies to the project because we have to have lightning. We have to have lightning strike trees and that sort of thing. So the goal is, at least this is what I feel God is showing me, is to have the lightning strike the tree and have this kind of shocking thing around it and then have it explode, almost like a slow motion kind of situation. And then that sets fire to the fields and that sort of thing. So I haven't worked on that just yet, but I really want to get to that. I think it can look pretty awesome. So I hope to get that done for the next vlog. For the moment though, we are going to move on to how this can look as regular lightning. Now for this first image, I didn't even have a verse before getting to it, but God gave me one pretty quickly. One thing I did notice is that the lightning is typically a very low resolution, and I would like to have it be a much higher resolution. So I'm still looking for a solution on that. But this is actually kind of cool. I like the kind of break-upness that it has. I don't know how else to describe it, but this is very cool. So this is the kind of lightning that would be striking the tree. I didn't mention this in the tutorial, but you should be able to rig it, this sort of thing. What I would recommend you do, though, is wait until you have aimed the, the curve and the striking point has been reached, and then add a rig to it so that you can just bend the plane with the curve. or you can model a plane along the curve, or whatever it is that you would prefer to do. One thing I would love to do is to create the actual lightning strike, where it comes down slowly with a point, a sharp point, and then that strike the tree, creating that flash, and then, of course, the explosion. That would be very cool. But again, that would be a project for during the week, not in the video. Otherwise, this video will probably continue on for 3 or 4 hours. Anyway, so let's get on to my favorite part of today's video, which is hieroglyphic. One thing that I've wondered about during this week specifically was whether make human characters could be used to generate hieroglyphics, because hieroglyphics generally have small text, which would be the information about the scene that you're seeing. And of course, there would be large figures, which we see here at the moment. Now, one thing that's wrong about the way that this specific hieroglyphic image is set up is the fact that the shoulders are, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, the shoulders are at full breadth. Not always level, but at full breadth. In this case, you can see that they're pretty much right on, except for Pharaoh. Pharaoh, I actually copied his pose from a hieroglyphic reference where I think he was being crowned, was his coronation or something. I just know that one character had his hands on the crown, and you can't really see the character because he was too chipped off. I don't know how else to describe that. Now, the big thing with hieroglyphics is the legs. So if you want to use make human characters to do hieroglyphics, you have to change the way you rig anything from the waist down. Another thing that's also difficult is perspective. They did not have perspective in their drawings. What they did have is scale, next to each other, but they did not have perspective. And as you can see on Pharaoh's beard over here, it looks fine. But I want to show you what it looks like in 3D. If you don't have shape keys applied to stretch it forward past the shoulder, it would be inside the shoulder, just like that. So it needs to be brought out, otherwise the drawing won't work. I also wanted to move his head over this way so that it might look better, but it's an option because everything is shadeless. So let's quickly try to correct, say, Aaron to show correctly. Yeah, see, I thought there was going to be a little bit of an issue over here. So all you can do is whenever you do see issues, you can just go in to your scene and adjust them. For example, over here with Pharaoh's legs, if you lift the shape key off, you would have seen his leg poke through over here. You can see that there's a slight point over here. So that's a hint over there. I personally would say just do it from the side if it is from the side. Most people won't know the difference for hieroglyphics if you follow the other principles that they usually do apply, which is that the feet are generally apart, even if they are just a little bit apart, but they are apart. Another thing that they do is they have repetition, and they also have levels. So if you have variation in your hands, which are generally open or closed, you have the shoulders facing more forward. Doesn't have to be on a level plane like this. It can be kind of slanted, like Aaron is over here. And of course, you maintain as much 45 and right angles. If you stick with right angles and you stick with 45-degree angles, and add some smoothness for the cloth, because they do add smoothness for the cloth. You should be good for a general hieroglyphic look. Another thing I'm also working on is a hieroglyphic font. And I'm not talking about like an accurate hieroglyphic font, because I can't read hieroglyphics. And that's it for this tutorial, for this vlog about the Exodus project. Have a great one, and God bless you.